Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Heather with Creativity by Heather BE, and today I'm going to show you an embossed watercolor birthday card featuring the Brutus Monroe stamps. So this is an example of the card, and what I'm going to be using is the birthday badges, and I'm going to be using two stamps from the stamp set. The first is that squiggly line to make my background, and then I'm going to use that center stamp badge that says Happy Birthday. I'm also going to be using three surface inks, the red, which is the wagon, the yellow, which is phone book, and the blue, which is cornflower. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually watercolor them. So I was playing around with some of the, to make some backgrounds with that squiggly line. So this is one I did, and I embossed it. And this is what I'm going to do today. So the embossing powder that I used for this one and that we're going to create today is red geranium, orange, yellow, lime green, and cornflower blue. And these are all Ranger embossing powders. So on this first one, I did the squiggly lines all where the loops were kind of facing up. And then I did another example where I rotated them. I did one up and one down and one up and one down. And this one I've actually cut out the center with a scallop die and created a clear shaker card that I'm then going to take one of the stamps that I watercolored today and put in the inside of the card so it's see-through. Now I'm not actually going to finish creating this card on video, but I will show you the end result at the end. So another thing I did is I white heat embossed the squiggly line, and I used the inks on it as well. And so I don't have the green or the orange, but when I used the ink on it with the ink tool and mixed them, it brought out the green and orange in those two areas. So and I would tell you, these inks, they blended really well. They went very smooth on the paper. I used a Bristol, Strathmore Bristol smooth cardstock, and they worked really, really well. I'm definitely going to play with that technique a little bit more with these stamps, or with these inks. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm going to heat emboss the squiggly line. So I didn't have a block that was big enough, and I didn't want to keep moving around my Misty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on a diagonal. Now, one thing I do love about this stamp is it's bigger than an A2 card base. So you don't have to have the same squiggly lines design in the same area. You can kind of move it around on your card base to give you a different look. So I'm going to do it on a diagonal, and I'm just going to go in rainbow order starting with red. And I'm going to speed up this embossing pretty fast. So I'm using my static powder tool, and I'm going to use my Versamark ink and ink it up, and I'm going to start with the red. So I'm going to just start right up in that corner, and I'm using the center of the squiggly line. And one of the things I love about this particular stamp is it's not perfect. It really truly looks like you just took the embossing and you just drew your squiggly line. So the pen lifted up in some areas, and I really like that about this stamp. So I'm adding my red geranium, and one of the things that I like to do is have a dry, thin paintbrush handy whenever I'm embossing, and that just helps to get some of those little flakes that may have come off of the design or what you want to actually heat emboss. It just helps to get those, to remove those, so that way they're not heat embossing onto your paper. So I have my heat gun warming up. What I do is I turn my heat gun on and I let it warm up while I'm putting the powder away. So I'm going to heat set that, and I love, one of my favorite things in card making and crafting is watching that that embossing powder melt. I just love it. It's just so neat. It's just like magic before your eyes to see that melt. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the orange. And you'll notice I moved my stamp over a little bit. And there is a corner where I didn't get it up in the top, but I'm going to cut this background out with a rectangle die, so it doesn't really matter that that didn't touch. And even if I wasn't going to cut it out, I think it kind of gives it a unique. I didn't want this background to look real uniformed because, as I said before, the squiggly line isn't. There's areas where it's lifted up and things like that, so I wanted to make sure that I kept kind of with that kind of not really messy, but kind of messy look. So I'm going to do the yellow. And I really like this yellow. It's a pretty bright, bold yellow color. Brutus Monroe does sell embossing powders. I currently don't have any. That is on my list and actually in my cart right now on the website of things to get. So as soon as I get those, I would definitely do a video using the Brutus Monroe embossing powders. I've seen them in a video that Christopher Allen did, and I love them. There's a penny color that he has that's gorgeous. It's a beautiful copper. So I'm excited to get those and try them out. And the last one we have here is the blue. And this is actually a cornflower blue, which is the same color as the blue ink that I'm going to be using when I watercolor the Brutus Monroe ink. And also I'm going to use the cornflower Brutus Monroe paper as a background for this as well. Okay, so all of our embossing is done, so I can set that aside, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the watercoloring. So I'm going to stamp that stamp out using my MISTI, and for the watercoloring I'm using the Tim Holtz watercolor paper. And I am going to use my MISTI for this, and the reason is because watercolor paper has a texture to it, and so sometimes it's hard to get a good solid stamp the first time, especially with this stamp, because the banner that says happy birthday is a solid banner. So I wanted to use my MISTI to make sure that I could get that good solid stamping for me to watercolor. I'm also going to stamp 2 of these and watercolor 2 of them at the same time, and I cut out the part of the video where I stamped the second one just for time's sake, and I do show you how to do this one. So I'm going to use my Hero Art Hero Hues black dye ink, and I'm just inking this up really good. And I will sometimes take my stamp chamois, even though it won't get on the paper, and just wipe that off. So I'm going to push down really good, and you'll see I'm really giving it a lot of pressure. I'm pushing pretty hard down on the MISTI, and it's still, there's some areas that just the ink didn't connect well. And it's not the stamp or the ink, it's the watercolor paper, just because of that texture. So I'm going to re-stamp it again, and this time get the inking that I want. And you can see there the second one's already been done as well. So this stamp, as you can see, it's 3 birthday candles, and then the glow of the flame, and then the ribbon that says happy birthday. So I have the 3 colors of inks. I have the red, which is wagon, the yellow phone book, and I have the blue, which is the cornflower. So I don't have the red or the orange. So I'm going to mix the colors, and I'm going to create my own orange and my own green. And this worked awesome with these inks. So all I did was dabbed the wagon ink onto my stamp block, sprayed it with a little bit of water, and now I'm just going to go in and watercolor that first candle. So if your ink is a little bit lighter than what you want, all you have to do is just stamp out more ink and use a little less water, and that's what I was doing there, because I wanted a little bit darker red than the color I was getting, and it ended up giving me a beautiful dark red color, as you can see there. And I'm going to leave the red on my stamp block because I'm going to add yellow now. And then once I'm done with the yellow, then I can mix those two, since they're already on my stamp block, and I can create my orange. So that's why I chose to do those two together. I am going to do the candle on the far right in the yellow, which is the phone book, and I was really, really happy with the way these inks watercolored. It didn't require much water at all. They went on really smooth. I was really, really impressed. Love these inks to watercolor with. So now you can see what I'm doing is I'm just pushing that red color over into the yellow. And the reason I did that is because the red had a little bit more water in it. so I knew it would be easier to push over. And you can see on the block there where it created that orange. And it creates a gorgeous orange color that I used for the flames. I was really happy with the orange color that I got. Now they do have an orange ink, Brutus Monroe does. It's Jack-o'-lantern, I believe is the color. And they have a couple greens. I know one of the greens, there's a Jurassic green, I believe. And I do plan on getting those inks, but in the meantime I didn't have them, so this was a way that I can mix, because I am going to mix the yellow and the blue and create a green as well to do the happy birthday and the banner. So I'm just going in with the orange and adding for my flames, and you can see that gorgeous orange that it's giving. Clean off my brush, and I am going to take a baby wipe now and wipe off my stamp block, because now I'm going to go in with the blue. And the yellow didn't completely come off in that corner, which was no big deal, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put yellow back in that corner anyway to create my green color. So I'm going to do the blue, which is the cornflower blue, and I love this color. Gorgeous, gorgeous color of ink. And I'm going to do my center candle with the blue. See, it's very easy to apply. I didn't have to continually keep going back to get color. Great inks to watercolor with. Okay, so now I want to make my green. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my phone book, which is the yellow color, and I'm going to add some water to that, and then I'm going to mix those. And I'm going to get a really pretty green color here. Now I decided I wanted it to be a little bit darker, so I am going to go back in and add some more of the cornflower blue just to give me a little bit darker color green. And that's the great thing about this. When you're creating your own colors like this, because you don't have the ink, or whatever your reasons are, maybe you just want to create your own color, you can determine how dark it is, how light it is, just based on what ink colors you're going to add, how much of the blue, how much of the yellow. So it was a lot of fun to go in and use these inks, which blended beautifully together to create the orange and the green. So the happy birthday it's very tiny in the ribbon. The ribbon is solid, as you can see. So I'm pretty much just going in and really painting over, watercoloring over the ribbon. I tried to stay within the happy birthday as much as possible, but with the ribbon being dark black, it didn't really matter. Okay, so I have my watercoloring done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to die cut these, and I'm going to do this off camera, so you guys don't have to watch me run it through a die cutting machine. I'm going to use the Simon Says Stamp wonky dies to cut the panel for the outside border frame, or I'm sorry, the outside panel. And then I used a Lawn Fawn the scalloped circle die to use for the happy birthday. And Brutus Monroe does they have square, rectangle, and I believe oval die cuts, and so that's something that I'm also planning on getting. So they do have those available. So when I go to put this on the panel on my card base, I realize that it's actually quite a bit smaller than my card base from where I had die cut it with the wonky stitch dies. So what I decided to do was to get the cornflower blue Brutus Monroe cardstock. And so I cut a piece of it to match the A2 size of the card base and put it down, and it really made everything pop. I was actually kind of glad that the embossed panel was too small, because it really looks so much better with that cornstalk, cornflower under it. Okay, so I'm going to put this down. I'm not going to give it any dimension. I am, however, as you saw earlier with the scalloped, I die cut a piece of foam, fun foam, that has adhesive on the back, and I am going to raise up the happy birthday badge in the center. So a lot of times I will use the fun foam as opposed to using like the 3M foam tape, which I love and I think works great. But a lot of times in the mail, if you're mailing a card, it'll get crushed and kind of change the look of the card a little bit. Whereas if you use a piece of fun foam, it doesn't do that because you've got a solid piece behind it. And mine is self-adhesive, and I always make sure that the adhesive part that comes with the fun foam is what I stick to my card, because that's going to be really strong, and I'm going to know that my my die cut is going to stay on, or whatever I'm putting on my card. And I live in Texas where it's very warm too, so if I send it to like my sister who lives here, it's going to sit in a hot mailbox as well, so I want to make sure that that's going to stick. So I'm going to take my Wink of Stella and go over, because the background Embossed was very bright and shiny, and of course the watercoloring was kind of flat. So I wanted to give the Happy Birthday badge stamp a little bit of some shimmer. And I'm also going to take glossy accents and just go over the flames and the actual Happy Birthday. Very simple card to put together. Love, love, love this stamp set. There's a couple more cards that I'm already kind of have in my mind that I'm excited to make with the stamp set. You know, everybody has a birthday, so you always need birthday cards. And this squiggly line, I'm telling you, sold me on this kit. Love it. So unique and so much fun to play with. So that is the finished card. And I do have, I'm going to show you, so this is the finished one after the glossy accents dried, and you can see how gorgeous that watercoloring is. Now this is the one that I had kind of showed you, I had started, that I put the shaker card, that I put the Happy Birthday behind it. And that's it. So I hope you learned something. Please, please go check out the website for Brutus Monroe. Some awesome things coming up and great stamp sets there. Also, I forgot to mention in my haul video that Brutus Monroe does have a stamp club. It's $5 a month. You get a stamp set that's made just for that month for the stamp club, and I believe it ships by the 15th of every month. So head on over to brutusmonroe.com and check that out. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, and have a great day.